Hey guys, and welcome back to another Conan Exiles video. Today we're reviewing the Lost Dungeon extension, the second new building set on the Bazaar and the second major bundle for the Age of War Chapter 3. Firstly, a disclaimer, this set was gifted to me by Funcom. Just like all my other reviews, that will in no way affect my opinions of this set, nor will it affect my recommendation or lack thereof. So without further ado, let's get started. The dungeon extension set, named Forlorn Crypt, is bundled with the previous dungeon pieces. If you own the previous bundle, it comes in at 1050 Crom coins, or just under $9, and without the previous bundle it's 1638, which is just under $14. The extension comes with 3 new item categories: stairs and ceilings, walls and doors, and a placeable sarcophagus. Some of the more notable pieces are the 2 tile high door frames, curved walls, and of course the first non-modded spiral staircase. In terms of building strength, it's a tier 3 set, so it's equivalent to reinforced stone or black ice. However, the 2 tile high door has 105k health, and the iron bar doorway has 7k instead of 70k, which I'm pretty sure is unintentional. As for the aesthetics, it's pretty characteristic of what you'd expect for a dungeon, and it's spot on with the original pieces of the set. Everything is comprised of very dark and gritty stone and laced with hints of moss. Some of the new pieces include metal as a secondary accent, much like the curved ceilings from the first pack, and they are suitably rusted. Skulls are also included as a reoccurring motif on the new crypt walls and the 2 tile doorways, which do help to break up the stone a little. In terms of colour, tone, atmosphere, light interaction, it's all pretty much spot on for how the set is designed, and it's not really trying to be anything aside from a set fit for a dungeon. However, the actual physical design is lacking in some places. There's still a fair amount of strange clipping going on between walls, foundation walls, ceilings, etc., and some of the new walls do have gaps between them, most notably the crypt walls. Now, if they all face the same way, it's fine, but they have an asymmetrical design. Your only choice to avoid the gaps is either to have all tiles on a row face the same way, which sometimes is not ideal, or to create a backing layer with foundation walls. Either way, not really the most user-friendly design. In terms of actually building with this set, it feels a little better than the original dungeon set did, but nowhere near as smooth as something like Aesir. The build set has some issues with build order, in that certain things need to be placed before others. I don't see this as a bug as such, many sets have this concept, but it does kind of get in the way more so than it does with certain others. Some of the new pieces like the quarter pillars work pretty well, and even the curved walls do play ball a lot better than those from the Turanian extension, for example, which were notoriously hard to use. They don't always behave, but they are a lot more consistent than they have been in the past. The spiral staircases definitely have a bit of a learning curve to them, and to be honest, they're not as smooth as some of the modded options. They also fall prey to the build order issues I mentioned earlier, but once you've played around with them for about 5-10 minutes, they do become a lot more consistent. The vaulted ceilings are very nice, though they do not interact with the quarter pillars in the same way that the Aesir set does, in that you could stand a vaulted ceiling on a quarter pillar. That wouldn't be too much of an issue normally, but that feature is really useful in the Aesir set, and it honestly kind of feels like a downgrade to not have it here. That being said, the whole time I was using this set, I felt like I was missing out on things. There's no wedges, which honestly I expected, but it feels like stuff is just missing from this set. 1 tile high doors, plain walls, rounded ceilings, straight stairs, it just felt like things were missing, and that I was kinda having to make do and bend the set to my will, rather than having it work with me. Additionally, to be brutally honest, this extension does nothing for the exterior aesthetics of the dungeon. It's still pretty ugly, and yeah, you can make certain things work to a semi-reasonable degree, but in the end, if you want the best results, you're ultimately going to have to mask the dungeon with something else. Funnily enough, I actually have a video all about masking scheduled very soon, so it is possible to make decent builds with a dungeon inside, but you'd be very hard pressed to make a nice looking build entirely out of this set that is also functional. Overall, though certain things like the curved walls have improved from previous iterations, this pack is not exactly easy to build with, and it does feel like you're missing out on a lot of pieces that honestly just seem like kind of common sense to have. Things like build order and working out how the spiral staircases work is all part of the learning curve really, although I do feel like the issue with the build order is a lot more prevalent in this set as opposed to something like Aesir, which does have its own inherent build order but is a lot more flexible and it's very easy to read where you've gone wrong. I think the biggest issue is that it doesn't necessarily feel like the dungeon set is working with you. Some sets like Numidian, Arena, Aesir, they generally work quite well for whatever you want, whereas it feels like Dungeon almost has a set way of building, and if you want to try and warp it and bend it to make other things, that is going to end up being a bit more difficult. So, final opinions, should you get this set? Well, it's aimed at making dungeons, and to be fair, it's pretty good at doing that. However, is it better than Reinforced Stone? Arena? Even Numidian? Not really. I understand what they've aimed for here, and I think the extension does make the dungeon set a bit more flexible overall. However, it's missing a lot, especially for the price point. The Aesir extension set only dropped like 2 weeks ago. It was kind of expensive, but it has pretty much everything. It's a breeze to build with, and what it sometimes lacks in design it makes up for in the total experience. Contrast that against the dungeon extension, and it is a night and day difference, and not a good one. I really want to like the dungeon set, and whilst it does nail some things like the atmosphere and how it works with light, even this extension leaves a lot to be desired. Additionally, the price point? Kinda yikes. Dungeon was a little expensive the first time around for what you actually got, and now it's more expensive. I feel like the disparity between price and contents is even larger. I gave the last dungeon set a very conditional recommendation, but for this one, I can't really recommend it. There's some cool ideas here, but between the bugged health on the iron doorway, the gaps in the walls, the sometimes obstructive build order, and just the overwhelming feeling that stuff is missing, I don't really think this is good for the price point. For pretty much the same price you can get the full Aesir set, which is much more flexible and enjoyable to use. If you've watched me for a while, you know I don't really like to be overly negative about anything really on the channel. I like to keep it optimistic, but no, this set is not it. I mean, I don't imagine I'll never use this set, there will be a time and a place for it, but I do imagine that Dungeon is going to end up sat with Khitan and Terranian as some of my least used building sets in the game. Had this been like, I don't know, $5, it probably would have got a conditional recommendation out of me for some of the aesthetic things it can do that other sets can't, but at this price point it's definitely a no. It is unique, but it's missing too much, it's kind of disappointing, and basically, it isn't really worth the price. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. I imagine most people will probably agree with me on this set. Dungeon was a bit of a letdown the first time, and even more so in my opinion the second, so if you want to build a dungeon, maybe give Arena a go instead. Again, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.